So yeah, I'm Saskie Dorman. I'm a palliative medicine consultant based in Dorset. We're all really keen to have high quality services that are there when they're needed, and for people to experience good outcomes throughout their life, and particularly towards the end of life. So we've been thinking about what that means towards the end of life, and that there's a lot of quality indicators out there nationally. This report from the Health Foundation talked about teams navigating a maze of quality indicators. And that really rings true. It can make it really hard to focus on what really matters. I think, Andy, you talked about if we've got so many priorities that it means that we don't really have any priorities at all. So there's just some examples of some of the national indicators available. So to try and see through the fog of all that, we've been doing some work which was funded through NHS England and with the help of Easier Inc. As a thinking partner in that. Do you want to go on to the next slide, Andy? So a small group of us got together, about 6 of us got together from across Dorset and had a think about our purpose, which we defined as, in my last year of life, help me to live well until I die. And that sounds really simple, but it took quite a lot of thinking together to define that purpose in a kind of no-nonsense way from the perspective of someone approaching the end of their life. Again, as Andy said, that's not enough just to define purpose. We need to see what it actually means in practice. So we thought through about what that means, kind of, if you think about the last year of life and the beginning, middle and ending of that. We listened to lots and lots of different people about that, what that means in practice. That included people with personal experience, people with professional experience, local organisations, national organisations, social media and so on. And we came up with a really long list of lots of things that we thought needed to happen for that last year of life to be as good as possible. Again, really difficult to focus on hundreds of things all at the same time. So we then kind of refined that down to just 6 core capabilities, looking at what's necessary and sufficient to achieve our purpose. So these are the relatively few things that if we do these things well, we can be really confident that the outcomes are as we would like from the perspective of all sorts of different stakeholders. And then we went on to validate those 6 core capabilities with stakeholders, and that actually led to it being 7 core capabilities. So we kind of reworded them slightly, and we ended up with these, which are recognising when the last months, weeks and days of life are approaching, helping people to be as comfortable as they want to be throughout, helping people to understand and anticipate what might happen, understanding what really matters to them and focusing on that together, helping them to live well in their community, supporting through illness in a way that feels right to them, and making sure that those close feel supported as well. So those were our 7 core capabilities or success statements. And thinking about that then became quite a simple frame to look at what was really happening in practice and whether that reality matched what we were trying to achieve. So we looked at a few people's experiences in depth, and we were able to understand not just what happened, but why those things happen the way they did and what makes it harder or easier to help people live well until they die. So one of the people we looked at together as a group, we looked at the story of a couple in their 90s. The lady was nearing the end of her life. She'd taken to her bed. She wasn't managing to get to the bathroom anymore. She and her husband were finding it difficult to manage that. And on the last day of her life, she was kind of rushed into hospital. And in that last hour or so of her life, she was kind of hoisted. She developed a pressure ulcer, and she was hoisted so that a photo could be taken of the pressure ulcer. And that was just an hour or 2 before this lady died. And that's obviously just nowhere near what any of us would want, either as an experience or an outcome. But rather than just thinking people just need to try harder to do better things, we were kind of trying to unpick why that happened the way it did. And that's how we ended up with this diagram on the right, which kind of summarises what we found. So we saw that it's harder to support people well at the end of life when we focus just on the diagnosis of what's wrong rather than what matters to them and what's strong. It's harder when we just focus on tick box assessments rather than understanding who someone is, their context, their story. It's harder when we focus on just on interventions rather than support. Again, not saying we don't need any of the left-hand side, but business as usual tends to focus very much on the left-hand side, the kind of the tick box assessments, the diagnosis, the interventions and the organisations or teams, rather than understanding what matters and how best to support people. So in terms of kind of shifting more towards the right-hand side of that page, or that sketch note, we we felt that, or we realised that one of the things we had to be really good at is having conversations about what matters. So whether that's with people who are approaching the end of their life, or their families, or with colleagues. And just on the slide there, you can see an example of a couple of templates we developed. So the top one, what matters to you one, this is something that I and a colleague, Andy Stone, developed to help us learn to have better conversations about what matters. Just been a really helpful way to focus on the kind of key things that you need in a what matters conversation, to be able to capture that, share information, reflect and learn. And that just takes a couple of minutes after a conversation to note down, to reflect. And thinking about conversations in that way has kind of led to different conversations. So just an example of how it's changed my practice. Met a woman a few months back who was in the last weeks of her life, who was becoming very breathless and anxious. Rather than kind of immediately looking for an intervention to help with breathlessness or services which might help, I asked what was important to her. She said she wanted to be at peace. And that led us to a conversation about what she could expect as part of normal dying, which she'd been really frightened about but hadn't really asked about. Family was also really important to her, so we explored how she might be able to have a conversation with her young granddaughter about dying and what support she might need to help her with that. So she found that really reassuring. She was much calmer afterwards. And it wasn't just helpful to her and her family as she was reaching the end of life, but also we know that breathlessness is a really, really common reason for people to come into hospital. So if we can kind of think in a different way, have better conversations with people, then we can have a whole load of interventions and activity towards the end of life. The second template, that's at the bottom right there, is a template which we developed to help us in our shared reflective practice as part of our team meetings. So that just lists the 7 core capabilities or success statements, and we just rate together how confident we are that those things are true when we're thinking about real people that we're supporting. We think about what makes it harder, what makes it easier, and what we need to do about that, and who's going to do what. So that's helped us to focus both on our shared purpose and some really kind of actionable things. It helps us build a shared understanding of how well that's all going, rather than just thinking that it's all going wonderful. Actually, this helps us to focus on that. And I think on the next slide it shows some comments from colleagues, which I absolutely love, because it's shown that the one on the left, Amanda, talks about this being the best thing we've done as a team in our meetings. Bev talks about people just being more engaged and feeling more comfortable to share and contribute. I see this as helping our team meetings and our team as a whole to be much more engaged and kind of outward focused, rather than very kind of introspective. I'd still say this is a work in progress very much, but it's been a really helpful shift from us just doing the work to focusing on learning together in the work, helping us to see patterns, helps us to support systematic improvements in a way that focuses on what really matters. So it's just been a pretty incredible experience, really, and something that's really good to build on.